welcome back to another edition of the Witsup Podcast. It is fantastic to see all of your friendly faces. Welcome back to another edition of the Witsup Podcast. It is fantastic to see all of your friendly faces. Today, I am testing our audience out a little bit. Here's what I would like from you. I need to find out whether you enjoy, well, not actually, I was going to say enjoy, but not necessarily enjoy. Enjoy is definitely a bonus, but do you listen to the pre-podcast ramble? And this right here, right now, this is what is the ramble. The couple of minutes before we get stuck into the chat with our special guest for the week, where I talk about anything, everything, nothing's off limits. It could be something that's off the top of my head at the time, or it could be something like this. I never know until I actually hit go and start recording, and I kind of enjoy it. But I want to find out whether you do listen to it. So here's my test. If you do listen to this rambly part, then I'd love for you to leave a comment in the comments section, funnily enough, on any of our social media platforms where we promote the podcast, or even pop it on the app that you're listening to this episode. Leave it on the app, and leave us a review as well. That'd be great if you could leave us a review there. I want you to answer this question. If you were to do a TED Talk, what would your talk be about? I'm keen to know. So this is A, a test to see if people listen to this bit, but B, I want to find out a little bit more about our audience. So I'd love for you to let me know, like, what kind of expert are you? Do you think you could be? It could be something where you really are a proper expert. It's your job. It's your passion, whatever. Or it could be funny. Like, I do funny. I like funny as well. But I'm just interested. Let's have a bit of fun. Let's see whether you actually listen to this part or whether you skip over it. Because I get it. I listened to one podcast, and his pre-interview ramble, it goes for about 18 minutes. And I just pretty much keep going until I find the interview. So I get it. And I might be a little bit offended. I won't be too offended if you don't listen to it. So anyways, leave a comment on the social media platforms where we promote this. And let's see what happens. All right, let's get to the episode. Welcome to the podcast. Jen, Annett, did I get that right? Annett.
It's actually Annett, but everybody says Annett. It's okay.
It's not. I need to do better.
There's a very small handful of people that pronounce it properly. And in the race world, it's just been easier just to go with it. So, but I've caught myself sometimes pronouncing it wrong because it just kind of goes through the race. I guess, well, everything with races and announcements and everything else, and you just get caught up in everything, and then I'm like, wait a sec, I fell into the same trap everybody else did, but it's okay.
Okay, so it's Jen Annett.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were you confused because I assume that's your husband's surname?
Yes. Yeah.
Did you get it wrong in the beginning when you
I
were getting used to it?
I have no idea, to be honest. I don't think so. No, I didn't, because his dad, like my father-in-law, it drove him crazy, people pronouncing it wrong. So it was definitely drilled very hard into my brain not mispronounce it. So
you're like the first time you meet them. Nice to meet you, Mr. and Mrs. Annett, and you're like, right, sit down. We need to have a discussion.
Yeah. Okay. Pretty much, but it's all good. It's just because there's not an E on the end, right? But people glance at it and then just want to pronounce it like the French kind of like first name, right? So
yeah,
it's okay. There's bigger things in life to worry about.
Well, true. But I'm notorious at getting it wrong. I do my best to try, but I am notorious at getting names pronounced incorrectly. Or if I try, they're like, don't even try. But your name's not really that hard to get right. It's just knowing, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. It's all good.
Okay. Moving on. Now, Jen, I was just having a quick scroll through your website the other day. And what's your hashtag? Race tough.
Yes.
Now I've seen some tough things, but But what I want to ask you is why race tough? Why is that? It's kind of like your tagline, I guess.
Yeah. So James Young is who kind of redid my website for me, and he came up with the idea of it. And he's like, I just think it suits you and your personality and everything you do about you and what you've been through. So, and I was like, you know what? I am totally digging it. Like, I have no second thoughts about it. So, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what I do, right? Nothing matters when you're in a race. You do race tough. You put 110% of everything out there, and stick it through even the worst of times, which I've done all but once. But
we'll get to that.
Yeah. So, but I don't know. That's just the way it is. Like when I'm out there racing on race day, it's I'm not there for all the fluffiness and just to be there and whatnot. I'm there to put my head down and do my absolute best. And that's, I don't know. It's, I guess, just being tough, right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And you said this, sorry, was it James who did your website?
Yeah.
So he said that race tough sort of is how you race, but you also said that he said it was a bit of your personality as well, which I guess my question to you is, you come across as very bubbly and lovely and giggly. How does that fit with your personality off the racetrack?
Do tough and stubborn fall into the same category?
I'm gonna go with yes.
So yeah, anybody that knows me or has met me will tell you that I'm probably one of the most stubborn people they've ever met. So I try to use it in a nice way, not like a-hole stubborn, but you know what I mean? But I am like, when I want to do something, my head's down and I'm doing it. I don't care. So it's, that's just the way I am.
And would your parents say that that's how you have always been? Do you remember that growing up, being that kind of person?
Well, you know what? No, not yes and no. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I was never really a super outgoing person or kid. I was pretty shy and picked on a lot as a kid, but which is maybe why now I'm have a tougher side to me. I don't know. But I know for a fact with my parents that I was definitely the bigger pain in the ass between me and my brother. So I guess there is some truth to that.
Are you the youngest?
No, I'm the oldest.
I would have assumed youngest, just for, well, maybe that's just me reflecting, projecting, because my younger brother was the biggest pain in the ass in our family. So maybe I'm just assuming that that's the youngest sibling's role.
I'm pretty sure I paved the way for my brother. I think he had it pretty easy after I went through. But that's okay. Can't go back and change it now.
True. And you guys are close now?
Me and my brother?
Yeah.
Or parents or we're all close. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We'll get onto that, but I want to go back to racing tough. Can we go through? I keep laughing because there is a certain race, probably one of your last. Was it your last race? Official race that you did where something happened, and we're going to get to that. We're just kind of teasing the audience here. But can we go through some of the tough times, tough races that you have been through over your career and those ups and downs?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, an Ironman is tough no matter what. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're a first timer or if you've done 100 of them, they're always tough. And there's always some sort of element that's going to come into play, something unexpected, unless you have that extremely unusual, perfect day, which almost never happens. But once in a while, it might.
Right? They've still got to
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
It's physical, mental. I've always joked actually that it would be really funny if somebody could tap a microphone into your brain and listen to the conversations that you have with yourself, because it is quite funny. And I know I even talk to myself out loud while I'm racing too, and then realize that I'm like, yes, hey, I can't be the only one that does that.
No, I agree. I think everyone loses their marbles in some capacity during an iron distance race. Every single person.
Yeah, it's usually about 32 kilometers into the run is where I hit that like argument with myself. But yeah, I mean, obviously once I turned pro, I started racing more. In 2015 is when I decided to race full-time and quit my full-time job.
I realized, I thought you had been, don't take offense to this, I thought you'd been in the sport as a pro for a little bit longer.
Well, I started racing pro in 2013, but it was just a couple challenge races here when challenge came in to Penticton when Ironman left. So it was just being a local. I just had my kid. I was back at work full time, and it was more or less a, hey, it's not going to cost you anything to give it a shot. So
roll out of bed.
Kind of, yeah, exactly. So and then came in third, and I was like, okay, well, next year might as well just do the same thing, right? So did it again, and then realized how the positive impact of the sport and how much I loved it, that I'm like, I need to make a decision. If I don't, and I hated my job at the bank, like you wouldn't believe, it was horrible. And I'm like, in that, like, if I don't quit now, I'm going to be stuck here for the rest of my life. Right. And you know what I mean? They just kind of rope you in with all the bells and whistles and good stuff. But so 2015 is when I was like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. Like it is now or never. I'll always have something to fall back on if this plan doesn't go that well. So my very first pro race in 2015 was in Coeur d'Alene. Yeah. And that was the year that it was insanely hot. It was like, I don't know, like 42 degrees, 45 degrees, something like that. Are you in Celsius or Fahrenheit? Yeah, you're Celsius. Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
All right.
We're good.
Yeah, perfect.
but for a second, I was like, Fahrenheit? That's not hot, is it? And then I.
Oh, no. Yeah, I think they measured like 112 or something off the pavement, or I don't know. It was more than that. It was closer to 50. I don't even care. It was really flipping hot. Yep. And I, at that time, I mean, I do live in the Okanagan, but I didn't used to do that well in heat at all. And then I got my first drafting penalty, and it was a bogus call. We won't go there, but anyways, it was just a really stupid male age group issue call. You know, those ones, right? Exactly.
Oh man. So
that and that was on the first loop of the bike. So I sat in the penalty tent right before we went out in the second loop, and I was like, oh my God. I'm like, I had my typical not so great swim and managed to pick off a bunch of these girls. I was picking my way through on the bike, and then I got this. It is. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yep. I wish swimming was my thing, but it's not.
The bike's more fun.
It's way more fun. You can go way faster.
That's how I look at it as well. Like the bike is like you're a kid again. Like that's where you actually just that's when you're having fun, and then it's just sandwiched by the other stuff.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it.
Exactly. So yeah, to make a long story short, basically I in the penalty tent for 5 minutes, and I'm raging. Like I'm so mad, and really let that kind of take over. I'm like, I can catch all the rest of these girls. And I'm just thinking of like Chrissy Wellington, the year that she blew those flats, and she like just ate her way back through everybody. And I'm like, I can do this. I can make it back through everybody. Not when you're not used to that heat and you haven't been doing this as long. And I was self-coached at that time as well. Not saying that that was bad, but there's still a lot to learn from an outsider's point of view, right? Doesn't matter how experienced you are. And by the time I got to the run, I was so hot. It was, my nutrition had gone to junk. And
you can swear on this podcast, by the way. If you're inclined to swear, go for it.
I'm trying to screen my awful potty mouth. So sometimes it just comes out. So
if your kid's there and you don't want to swear in front of your kid, I understand, but feel free to shout it out.
Let it go.
I love a swear word. I love it. Adds flavor to a story. And especially because a lot of people aren't actually watching this, they're going to just be listening to it. Just swearing just adds a little bit of flavor.
Okay,
So
perfect. I won't censor myself then.
Excellent.
So I ended up basically walking and puking the entire run, and I was so like I'm like, I can't quit. Like, this is my first like Ironman race as a pro. This is like my first, go at actually pursuing this as a pro. And I'm like, you can do so much better than that. And then I have a really guilty conscience. So I'm like, there's so many people that know that I'm racing here and I'm letting everybody down. I'm like, I don't even care about myself at this point. Like, I just don't want to be a disappointment to the rest of the people of my life. And so that's basically like, I'm like, just do your best and make it across the finish line. And Johnny, my coach now, was actually there with a couple of other athletes, because Coeur d'Alene's only about a 5-hour drive from where we live.
Oh, really?
It's awesome. So we were there with a few other people from Penticton, and he was riding his bike along beside me and said something about like, oh, if you want to race Whistler in a month, you should quit. I'm like, I'm not freaking quitting. I'm not blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I've never had a DNF. I'm like, I'm not quitting. It's like, well, you really need to think about it if you do want to like give it another shot, right? Because Penticton's small. We all know each other and whatnot. And I was just like, leave me alone. Let me finish. Like, go coach the people that you're actually coaching. Like, I'm not quitting.
Question. Were there a few swear words then, surely?
I'm pretty sure. All I know is that my stomach was, exactly, pretty much left all over the ground everywhere. So that was my nice rude awakening to racing Ironman as a pro. So there was kind of my like, I'm not quitting, right? Like, I just can't at all. I just am not a quitter. I don't care. I don't have anything to prove, but why quit? Like, right?
Yeah.
And then, I'm just trying to think. Like, I raced Whistler and then came in third, and I was like, okay, this is great. And in that in-between time, I hired Johnny as a coach, because that was kind of that like breaking point where I'm like, you know what? Might be a good idea. Or like, I want to see, if somebody else can see, like, take a look at what I'm doing and what I've done and see if it's even the right decision to pursue it professionally. Like, is there potential there or is there not? Because I don't want to be pursuing something that is pointless, right? So that was 2015. And then I've had a really bad strain of races in heat where I've walked the run, puked, walked. So I don't know. And then when I raced here in 2016 for the ITU long course championships, I came off, well, actually I was leading the run because I came off the bike in second, but Melanie McQuaid dropped out partway into the first part of the run. I think she had an injury at that point. So I ended up running in first, and I'm like, this is awesome in your hometown, right? Exactly, right? I'm like, just be smart. But Liz Lyles was not that far behind me, and we all know what a great runner she is.
Decent.
And I totally had it, like, I was at peace with it in my head the entire race, that I'm like, doesn't matter where I am, she's a faster runner. Like, I'm okay with that, because I can't compete with that, right? It'd be like me trying to compete with Lucy Charles for swimming. It just, it's not even, you know what I mean? Just don't do that. And yeah, she passed me with like, I don't even know, like 3-4 kilometers to go, maybe a little bit more. And then she only stayed about 15 seconds ahead of me. And I'm like, okay, I can maybe hang on to this. And yeah, I think it was only about 3.5K. And so I just kept her the same distance. And a friend of mine, just as I was about to turn into the last like 1.5 kilometers or so, she's like, you got to go get her. She's like, you could be 99% fit, but if your brain is like taking up that other, or mentally you're like, no, not even like 1% there or whatever, you won't be able to do it. Like, you're not going to do it. Like, you need to, doesn't matter how fit you are if your brain's not in it. Yeah. And, you know what I'm trying to say, right? Like, the analogy I'm saying. Yeah. And I don't know. I was just like, oh, you know what? Screw this. Like, I'm like, third place is so far back now. I could probably walk the next 1.5 kilometers. So really, I have nothing to lose. Give it a shot. Yeah. And I ran her down and ended up passing her, I don't know, probably about 0.5K to the finish line. Yeah. And I don't even want to know what I looked like. It was the epitome of the worst, ugliest running style ever. And just like gasping for air. I'm like, this is awful. And I just, every corner I went around, I'm trying to look behind to see if she's right behind me, expecting her to be right on my butt. And yeah, I ended up coming in first. So, I mean, there was my little, like, you know, put your head down. There's always a little bit more to give. You just got to figure out how to untap it. Right. Yeah. So
that was clearly a pivotal moment in showcasing what you can actually do. Cause I get it, going head to head with Liz Lyles on a run. She's a machine. She's an incredible runner.
Exactly. So, and that's why, like, I was at peace with that in my head, right? Because I'm like, you know, there's things that I'd love to do. There's the reality of things. The reality is she's a faster runner. But at that time, I was like, you know what? Like, do it, see what you can do. And I'm like, it's not going to be pretty. You might not make it to the finish line.
But you can still crawl and still get second.
Exactly. And really, you're never going to know unless you try, right? Yeah.
That's awesome. So is that really a moment that cemented for you that, yes, I'm doing the right thing, chasing this career of, I shouldn't say chasing because you're in it, but, choosing the career of a professional triathlete, was that really a cementing moment?
Yeah, I would say so, for sure. I mean, the year before, when I came in third at Ironman Canada after my awful Coeur d'Alene experience, that was definitely showed me that it was a step in the right direction. But winning here against the field that I was in was, definitely a, like, you've made the right decision kind of point. So it was great.
Yeah. So let's fast forward to 2019 in Kona at the Ironman World Championships. Before we get into the situation, what kind of, and this question is a good question to ask after the race, because whenever I ask this kind of question pre-race, no one gives you an honest answer. Like, you can, how's your form? Like, no one is on that island and giving a very honest answer, because you don't want to give away your game plan, right? But leading into that race, what kind of form were you in? What was your goal?
Top 10 was my goal. And it was I'd love to do better than that, but I think realistically top 10 was a a good goal to have. And I knew that if I had the day go as well as it could within my capability, that it was very probable that I would be in that top 10.
Yep.
After what happened in 2018, my shifting got all shorted out from that rainstorm the night before, along with a bunch of other people.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So I was in probably the best shape of my life going into that race in 2018. And then obviously that affected it. I still finished, but it took me out of any contention for a top 10, right?
Yeah.
So having been there the year before and knowing a little bit more what to expect I raced there in 2008, but a lot changes in 10 years. Just with the hype of being a pro and everything, I was so much more relaxed in 2019 when I was there. It was just, I tried not to let my nerves get the best of me, and just, I don't know. It's hard to explain what I'm trying to say, but I just felt really, really comfortable going into the race, and I'd put, a super solid amount of training in, and I had the opportunity to go 2 weeks early before the race, to acclimatize. And so I'd invested that time. My family invested that time into me to allow me to go.
Yeah.
So I was feeling really, really good because I put in some really solid training sessions and feeling really good in the heat, which for me, that was a huge mental thing for me, because I do have a bad history of the heat affecting me. And I had really felt like I had nailed down everything I needed to nail down to perform well in the heat. So I was feeling fantastic going into the race. I was hoping I was going to have a solid swim, and then kind of knew what I was up against on the bike. Mm-hmm. And then, run better than I did the year before and not be sick. And I was feeling really good about that. So not really like too much of a game plan other than, stick to your own plan and not race somebody else's race, which is the way I usually try to go. But
it sounded like you're in tip top shape. You were relaxed but confident as well, which is I think leading into a world championship is three very key things to have in your arsenal for sure. But unfortunately, something that was it was not a rainstorm, it's a medium motorbike that's fucking with your race. And so essentially you got hit by a motorbike on course it was going around a corner, wasn't it, on a Leahy Drive? Is that right? No, not
no, it was going down Palani. Palani, sorry. Palani. So I was probably 2/3 of the way down the hill before that sharp left-hand turn. So only
that's hot corner to a lot of spectators. Who's listening? That's where we're talking about, that hot corner on basically at the very beginning of the race.
I think it was about 2.5 kilometers in or so.
Yeah,
if that.
You're not even warmed up yet.
No, not at all. And I didn't quite have the swim that I thought I was going to have compared to the practice swim that we'd done a week before. So I came out about 3 minutes slower than I had anticipated. So I was a little bummed about that. It was really like focusing on trying to regroup my head and what I needed to do to get myself back to, back in the game and whatnot. But nobody expects a medium motorcycle to just slam you off. So I guess one of the reasons I'm so interested in this story is being a media person, being on the back of the motorbikes and being hyper aware of athletes around me. Even though as the passenger, it's not my job to be aware of the other athletes. That's
fully in control of the rider. I ask them to do something, and if it's safe to do it, they do it. If it's not, that's completely their call. Because it's hard for me to look at what's happening behind and in front while I'm, with my eyes on the viewfinder on the camera. So that is like in any, the driver's in control, the passenger. I'm not a backseat driver. Like that's just how it goes.
No.
But I also know the way that triathletes race, and I know how fast bikes go and how triathletes handle bikes. So I feel like compared to a motorbike rider, I've got a little bit more knowledge, and so I will keep my eye on things and let them know if they're probably getting a bit too close or what have you. So I guess what I'm getting at is, first of all, what actually happened? You're going around a corner and they tried to undertake you or overtake you or something, or?
No. So I turned to go down Palani.
Yep.
I was going about 50-ish K an hour at that point, because I was coming down into where I knew I needed to slow down and not hit the spectators.
Yep.
And I'd seen out of the corner of my eye that a motorcycle kind of on my left side, right?
Yep.
Right. We're going down.
Yep.
So the motorcycle's on my left side, and I was aware that it was there, and I had gotten up like onto my bars to brake to go into the corner. Yep. And it was like, the way I remember it is almost slow motion. Like he just turned right in front of me. Like just not a clue that I was even there. And it was like, I just remember yelling like, no. And then,
oh God,
that was it. So there was no warning, no nothing. Like I was focused on where I was going. I was where I was supposed to be. Like I wasn't in the wrong in terms of where I was on the road. In my opinion, a motorcycle should not even be in that section of the course. It is way too, like there's too much speed and too much going on. Everybody coming out of the water is so clumped up at that point. Like I don't know if he was trying to turn in somewhere and turn around, but either way, they basically just went straight across the race line. So I went into the back, I think, like the back side of it. Like I basically T-boned it, for lack of better terms. And then the next thing I knew, I was on the ground, and I'm like, my bike is like over here, my bottles are over here, and I'm like, I'm in so much pain I can barely move. Mostly I think having the wind knocked out of me. And then there was a lot going on at that point in the next few minutes. I can't really, I was more mad than anything once I could get my breath back. I'm like, I don't know, everything hurts. I'm like, my shoulder blade area was killing me, my side, my wrist, like everything. But I'm like, okay, it doesn't seem like anything is like I can move. Right. And then I'm like, once I got up off the ground, there was some other people there obviously that helped, because there's a lot of spectators in there. My husband actually was at the top of the hill, and he was down there. Somehow my coach was there too. I don't know where he came from, but and I was basically just like, give me my fucking bike back, let me get on the bike. Like I just let me go. He's like, I'm not stopping. And everybody's like, what hurts? I'm like, I don't care. Like, just let me go. And then somebody pointed out, they're like, you're not going anywhere. Your front wheel is shattered. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? And I just started screaming at anybody. I'm just like, somebody get me tech support. Like, I need a wheel, right? Like, I'm just like, somebody's got to be out there. Like, call something in. Like, we're like, just get me a wheel and get me back on this bike. I'm like, have no idea how much time has passed at this point. But I'm like, I don't care. I did not come here a second time to have a shit race. Like, I'm here to do what I need to do. And it just so turns out, and I mean, and then I'm freaking out because I'm like, I can't take anybody else's wheel because it's outside support. I'm going to get disqualified and blah, blah, blah. And my husband actually had broken his leg and had his cast taken off the day before he flew out to Hawaii. So Ventum had lent him a loaner bike for a race day so that he could get around. And which just happened to have race wheels on it. So there was no tech support showing up, whatever, right? And he's like, just take the wheel. And everybody's telling me to take the wheel. And I'm like arguing at everybody else. And I'm like, I can't, I'll get disqualified. And I think at the end of the day, everybody else there probably knew that I wasn't going to end up finishing the race anyways. But in my head, I'm like, I don't care. And then I ended up putting the wheel on because I didn't have a choice at that point. And I'm in my head, I'm like, I'll just deal with this at the end of the day. Like I have a valid argument at this point about what happened. I'm like, I'll deal with the flipping wheel. And so I took off, and that was at Quaquini Highway, which is not the smoothest pavement ever. And I think once I kind of like sort of calmed down, I was like, wow, I hurt a lot. And I'm like, but I'm so mad right now. That I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'm just mad and I just want to get out there and race. And when it came back down, and we all know this, spectators are amazing. And all the cheers that I had coming back up Palani before heading out on the Queen K, like, I'm like, this is amazing. Like, this is so cool. I'm like, you got this. You can do this, right? And I'm like, okay, I had to revamp my nutrition because I'd lost all my nutrition bottles in the crash. So I'm like, okay, like, figure this out, be smart. I'm like, you know what's on course. Like, you just like, don't be stupid and not take anything in, right? So like, figure out calories and all that stuff in your head. Like, it's not the first time you've had to do something like this. And I made it out. Well, it was about 150K in where the pain really started to set in. I think adrenaline had kind of kicked away. And I'm like, every time I went to like reach back to get a bottle, I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I can barely between my wrist and my ribs. But I'm like, there's just so much referred pain through, like, it was almost like from my spine wrapping all the way around to my chest. So it was really hard to pinpoint where the pain was actually coming from. And I don't know, I passed a couple of other pros that weren't having good days. We kind of like gave each other the whole, like, you know, have a good race, don't quit, like, blah, 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 right? You know what you do. And somehow in that last 30 kilometers, I convinced myself that the pain would go away once I started running.
Because we know out of all three, running's the least painful. So
Exactly. I'm like, you'll be so much better once you're off the bike. You're not in this position anymore. Like, I'm like, you're fine. I'm like, pop a couple Tylenol, like, you'll be good to go. Like, that'll take the edge off of it. And I start running and I'm like, oh my God, I've taken like half breaths. I'm like, okay, just relax. Like, just, you know, get through it. And I got up to one corner and I saw a friend and she's just like, are you okay? And I'm like, no. I just started like bawling and I'm like, oh, it hurts so much. I'm like, I can't do this. And then I'm like, no, you have to do this. You can't, like, and it's that mental like argument that you have with yourself, right? And I had moments there of like, I'm like, okay, like, just try to run the pace you need to run. Like, you still have a possibility to do well if you could just run. So I got in maybe like a kilometer of like 420Ks, 430Ks, which was kind of where I wanted to be for pace wise. And then just every now and then I'd have like one breath where I breathe too hard. And I'm like, ow. I'm like, I can't do this. And I ran into my coach and my husband and my son and my friends that were there. I had two friends that flew out too to watch me to boot. I'm like, this is such a disappointment to everybody. I'm like, just let me try. And I got to the turnaround and walked back with another friend that wasn't having a good day either. And she's just like, oh, she's just like, I don't care. She's just like, I'm gonna have the worst race ever, but I'm gonna finish. Like, walk with me. I'm like, I'm not fucking walking the rest of the way.
Yeah.
I don't need to prove that I can finish this race at this point. I'm like, I know I can. Everybody knows I can. I'm like, no. And made it back to the next aid station where like my coach and my friends and family and everybody were, and pulled the pin there. So that was awful. I don't think I've ever cried so much during a race. And it was just like, it wasn't even just pain. It was just like mentally, like It was so crushing. Right.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's such a big build to the world championships. So it's all of that emotion and mental focus that you've put into just getting to the start line that just obviously is going to come out. Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of a really shitty situation. And then, well, to make matters even worse, they finally got me out to the hospital there to do x-rays and a CT scan and everything. And they missed my broken rib, completely missed it. So they basically just gave me a bunch of painkillers and they're like, if you didn't hit your head, you didn't get a concussion, which we all know is bogus because you don't actually have to hit your head to, I'm like, when you go from 50 kilometers an hour to 0 in like a half a second, there's no doubt that your brain got sloshed around inside your head, right? So it was kind of a really bogus hospital trip. Nothing really came out of it. And I mean, at that point, I think I was still running on some adrenaline and everything else. And then the next day was awful. Oh my God. I am not even joking. I would go through labor again over the amount of pain that I was in from like through my ribs. And then it was unbelievable. Like I did my labor almost all pain-free or pain relief free. We'll put it that way. Yeah. But it was awful. But then, after a few days, I'm like, well, they didn't find anything. Like, it's just got to be soft tissue. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, Arizona's coming up. I'm like, I'm going to end the year with that, on a good note. I'm like, I had an amazing race in Arizona the year before. Ran a PB marathon. And I'm like, I got this. Like, let's just finish on a good note. Right. Yeah. And then by the time I got back here, I'm like, I don't know. I can't believe how much pain I'm still in. There's got to be something missed. And it was the broken rib, which was displaced. So it wasn't even just like a hairline fracture. It was sitting kind of like that.
Yeah, right.
So
kind of obvious, you'd think.
Yeah. I don't know how they missed it because by the time I saw a specialist, like a surgeon, and he got the things from Kona, he's like, it was so obvious on that CAT scan. I'm like, don't even tell me that. Like, I don't even want to hear that at this point. So once we figured out it was broken, everybody's like, there's like, you can't race. You can't. Like, I'm like, but I can take painkillers and everything will be good. Right? I'm like, I don't want to end the year on this note. And so yes, Arizona was out, and then we're like, okay, you know what? If we are really like diligent about healing this thing properly, doing all the right things, New Zealand will get you like, right? Yeah. And it ended up taking until about mid-March for me to be almost all pain-free. So November, December, January, February, March. So like 5 months. Yeah. And at that time, that's when COVID decided to basically take the world down. Yep. So
like a motorbike taking down an athlete.
My hopes of racing in the spring kind of disappeared with COVID. And then we're like, oh, like things will be better by summer. No. Yep. How about fall? No. Nope. How about this spring? No. So I mean, it sucks. It is what it is. I mean, physically I'm great now. I'm, my ribs healed, my concussion symptoms are all gone.
Yeah.
I still have a funky indent in my quad though, from where I hit my, aero bar pad. It's funny. It's like a full indent in my muscle.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's a hard hit.
I'm not going to be a leg model anytime soon.
Damn it.
I know. There goes my backup plan, right?
Oh gosh. Far out.
Yeah, I know it's kind of weird, but it doesn't cause me any problems. It just looks funky. So
all right.
that's right.
Story to tell.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I like physically I'm ready to go now. Like I'm good. So I'm not finishing my career as a pro on that note in Kona. So now I'm just waiting for things to, I know. Well, our travel restrictions are not helping my situation at all right now.
No.
So.
But you ended up taking the bull by the horns and just doing your own iron distance triathlon in the middle of a pandemic. Because were you just like, I've had enough. Fuck it. This is what I'm doing.
Oh, we come up with really weird ideas sometimes. I don't know, between my coach and I love my husband to death, but when he's had a few beers in him, he has really good ideas. We all know how that goes. And it just came up in conversation like a week before the race was supposed to happen here. That one of the other Jeff Simons was apparently talking about maybe doing it.
Yeah.
And we're both coached by Johnny. And I'm like, he's like, I think that's a fantastic idea. You should totally do it. I'm like, are you serious? Like, I have swam once since Kona because of my rib, and then the pool shut down, and then I had a kid at home full time, so I couldn't swim.
Yeah. And
my last long run, I think, was about 6 weeks ago, and it may have been an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe. Like, I've done quite a bit of biking, but I'm not quite, don't really see your logic here, right? And I said something to my husband, and he's like, that's a great idea. I totally think you should do it. And then our friends are around too, and they're like, we're going to get the media and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh God, you guys, come on. Like, this was kind of like a joke on my end of things, which now everybody's taking seriously. So once I kind of thought about it a little bit more, I'm like, you know what? Like, this is all sucked for all of us that have been training and not being able to race. And I think it's been tough mentally, mostly, right? Because it's, you can't just wake up and decide to do an Ironman a week from now if they're going to hold an event, but then do you want to invest that much training into an event that's not going to happen either, right? Yeah. And we're all just in that unknown. And it was just like, I think we all had our hopes up that things would have gotten better by the end of the summer. Yeah. And that Ironman Canada would have. And I mean, not to mention that everybody was so excited to have the race back here finally.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like, it was just a whole lot of like, this sucks.
Yeah.
And I kind of just said, I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm not going to be racing anytime soon because there are no events happening. It's not going to cost me anything to go do this. I'm like, my husband and my coach, they're like, we'll be your support for the day. Yeah. Like, let's do it. I'm like, you know what? Like, if I can maybe just motivate or inspire anybody who's watching, you know, my craziness, basically, you know, just to put a smile on people's faces and just say like, look, you know what, like, things are going to return back to normal. Like, this is going to happen, that it was supposed to happen. Like, I don't know, like, I just was hoping it would bring some sort of good. I'm like, I was really just out there to do it. And then on the other note, I'm like, you know what, let's have some fun with this. So I'm like, my husband paddleboarded for us. And then they took Johnny's van around the bike course, and like every station they had like music blaring for me and all my bottle
cool.
handoffs. And then we strapped our big speaker to the back of a bike that my husband was riding, and then he rode in front of me the whole time for the ride with like this super awesome playlist that we made blaring full blast, and just drawing people's random attention. And I don't know, we tried to have some fun with it and smile about it. And it probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, but I had fun with it, right? Like it was it was good.
Well, but like you say, it's not like there's any races coming up around the corner, so it's a big training day for you. And I think, and we've all been in this situation throughout the pandemic, is just that lack of control and the unknown. That by doing something like that as well for you personally, I imagine it's taking back a bit of control. Like, this is what I'm going to do with all of the, work and fitness or whatever. It's my opportunity to take that back a little bit, and then obviously pay it forward as well, in the hopes that people would be a little bit inspired or think you're crazy and laugh and have fun with it or whatever. And
that's kind of where I was at too. I'm like, I need to remind myself that I love doing this. And that's, you know what I mean? That's that was, I would have to say, probably a lot of that day as well. It was like, I'm going to get out and do this because I actually love doing this. Not because it's my job, not because I just signed up for a race and I'm training all year for it, but it's because I actually love it. And it was really cool because Rachel McBride and Steph Corker showed up and swam with me. Like, she messaged me, I think the night before, and she's like, hey, do you have an extra wetsuit that Steph could use? I'm like, yeah, but I'm here and you're where? And they're like, we're coming through tomorrow morning. Do you want somebody to swim with you? I'm like, yes, unreal. That's awesome, right?
Good people.
So just like cool things like that, right? So
definitely.
I don't know. I think in today's days, we all need something to smile about, right?
Absolutely.
So
couldn't agree more. Sorry to go back to this, but I've just been making notes because I'm like, there's still something I wanted to ask. But back with the Kona race, what did the media motorcycle, what did they do? Did they stay there for a while and make sure that you're okay and call the right people to try and get you tech support? Or was it sorry and then they left, or you don't even remember?
I know that they were there only because I was pretty sure my husband was going to literally murder them.
Right.
I do remember him yelling at them.
Got it. And fair enough.
Yeah. I don't blame him. I would have done the same thing. And had I not been so like focused on trying to get back out on the race course, I probably would have turned around and done the same thing. Something probably not professional, but I have to be careful, right? And I know from some of the pictures that I got that the motorcycle was still there, but I don't know. I honestly have no idea if they attempted to do anything at all. I don't. I do remember that they pulled up beside me out on the Queen K and said something to me, and I think I pretty much just flipped back at them or gave them the bird, one of the two, because I was like, sorry doesn't cut it. Like, sorry does not cut what you did to me. So
no, it doesn't. And what was Ironman's response?
They obviously set me up to go out to the hospital after I was taken off the race course. But since then, we haven't had much conversation. I have voiced my, as athletes, obviously we all need to work to make it to the world championships. Like it's qualification. It's the best of the best. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I did prove that I was supposed to be there, and somebody involved with that organization took that away from me. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it was fair to ask for a spot into, well, it would have been last year's race, but because of COVID, it's complicated things. So I'm going to say the next world championship as a kind of replacement for what happened. Now, unfortunately, there has been pretty much silence on the other end regarding that. So, yeah.
Oh, that's...
So, I mean, had the race actually been happening, if COVID hadn't happened, I'm sure that there would have been a little bit more communication, or at least definitely more pursuance on my end, for sure.
Sure.
When the time is right and we know that the races are going to be happening, I will be pursuing it again.
Okay.
For sure. I'm not letting it go.
Yeah. Good for you.
I mean, yeah. I've proved my point that I do deserve to be there.
Yeah.
And to have that happen, it was awful. Right. So I'm not asking for, a free spot. It's like, hey, give me a spot because I need a spot. I just feel like from a organizational point of view, if they're really trying to look after their athletes, especially the pros, that it's just the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And I would, if it was any other pro in my situation, I would expect the exact same thing. Like it's just the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Or at least that's my opinion. So yeah, I think COVID kind of screwed with that a little bit.
Yeah, it did, didn't it?
So yeah, once the races are up and running again, and we know kind of where I'm going to be able to race, when Kona is going to happen again, then I will be diving back into that.
Excellent.
And I will report back.
Yes.
Yes.
Very interested.
Yes.
To find out what happens. Very poor timing with the pandemic, but I think, God, that is the very least, in my opinion, the very least that they can do to make up for something like that. That's shit. But anyway.
It is.
Yes.
That's actually kind of saying it nicely, but
yes, who knew that I could hold back?
I know, exactly right. We got to make it at least like maybe 14 plus rated, right?
Yeah. Hey, so how old's your son?
He's 9. Oh, well, he'll be 9 in May.
Okay. Oh, very soon. And just while we're on the subject of children, you also have a new furry child in the household.
I do. He's sleeping on my sweaty clothes right now.
Excellent.
I didn't have time to put them all away. I pretty much ran in the door like 5 minutes before I had to get on with you. So
that's right. You should see the nightmare behind the screens here. It's okay. Organized chaos is what we call it.
Exactly. Hey, it's what works for you. But yes, I do have a brand new fur baby.
Little golden retriever. He is delicious. And I expect lots of photo updates on the old gram, please. More puppies.
Yes, I created an Instagram page for him. So
looking that up.
It's
right.
Enzo _ the golden 26.
Enzo _ the golden
26. Yeah. Did you find him?
Oh, there's a few Enzo Goldens.
I know. That's why I had to put the 26. I know.
Got him. What's the 26 stand for?
He was born on January 26th.
Got it.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. He's so delicious. Oh my God.
I have a few more pictures. Sorry?
I was just going to say, I probably shouldn't sit here recording a podcast just scrolling through your Instagram feed. I'm not sure it's going to be all of that entertaining for our listeners. But there you go. If you want to see a cute dog, head to Enzo_the Golden 26. Highly recommend. But
yeah, he's adorable.
Sorry, and what's your son's name?
Nixon.
So
yeah.
I wanted to, because you said this very early on in our chat about, I guess, taking the leap into becoming a professional triathlete. How old was your son when you made that decision?
Like
when you decided to go
first race pro,
so quit when you quit the
time.
bank. Yeah.
He would have been 3.
Right.
3. Yeah.
So I guess
so,
this almost probably comes from quite a. Yeah. Okay. So that's how old Frankie is at the moment. So this is probably coming from more of a personal kind of curiosity. Because I guess I've always lived my life in a work capacity, just following what I want to do, not really caring about how much I earn, all that kind of stuff. And then I've gotten to this point in my life and I've got a 2.5-year-old and I'm like, shit, maybe I should have been a little, sort of put some money aside for the off chance that I might want a kid one day and, maybe a bit more security. That's just kind of that's what's happening in my world at the moment.
Yeah.
So how did you go? Obviously going from quite a secure job with a secure future. How did that sort of internal monologue, or I guess external monologue, because I assume you probably spoke to your husband about it before you quit your job, but
we did.
Yeah.
We did have that conversation.
It's probably a good thing to discuss with your significant other. But how was it a hard decision to make? Like, what were some of the things that came up in those conversations?
So there's actually a few more kind of details to why I quit.
Oh, okay. Maybe I am digging up dirt. Am I?
No. So I have epilepsy, right? And
yes.
Yeah. So I had a really bad period of time where I had a lot of seizures, and they're full like grand mal seizures where I don't breathe or anything. Wow. And I was on a like a pre-surgical basically screening list where we were going through all the testing to possibly have brain surgery to take out that part of the brain that causes the seizures. I know it sounds really like crazy, but it's actually not as crazy as it does sound. It's actually quite safe in the
but still they're drilling into your brain.
I know, but I am not a fan of taking medications, especially medications that haven't been around for a really long period of time. You really don't know the long-term side effects of. And at that time, the medication I was on wasn't working either. So I'm like, I'm just not into being drugged all the time if I don't have to be. But we did a lot of memory testing, and it turns out I am verbally stupid. And
this is
and visually semi-smart.
I've just come up with the title of your podcast episode. Jen Annett, verbally stupid, visually smart. Got it. Okay.
Perfect.
Sorry, continue.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. I have to joke about it because I'm like, I can't do anything to change it. And it is the truth. So basically my verbal memory is moderately damaged, I guess, or I have moderate loss from it.
What does verbal memory mean?
So like when people tell me things, I don't retain it. So visual memory. So when I see things, I can remember things, right?
Oh, okay.
But when people are talking to me about stuff, I have to really, really concentrate to remember what it is that you have told me.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So
sorry, because now I'm super fascinated in this. So would you say that learning, and I guess, excuse my ignorance, but do you have epilepsy pretty much from day dot, or is it something that can happen later on in life?
it's something that you can be born with. It's something that can disappear. It's something that can come on later on in life. There's a lot of unknowns with what causes it and triggers and everything else. So I want to say usually people are born with it. Mine started after I was hit by a car in 2008.
Okay.
That's when I started having seizures. They've been under control though for I think almost 8 years now, 7 years now.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
So, and it's basically epilepsy is just once you have, I think, 2 or more seizures for like no apparent reason, you're classified as an epileptic. They don't know. I have no idea what my triggers are. And it really sucks because I have no idea. Other than the fact that I used to always have my seizures during off season when I wasn't really training at all. I've never had a seizure during full-time training ever.
Interesting.
Could be coincidence, but that was the pattern. Mm-hmm. But so basically I've been diagnosed with epilepsy because I've had all these seizures and they don't know why. Yeah. And I have scar tissue in my brain that they did find. So that's where they're thinking it's stemming from, which is what they would have taken out if they'd done the surgery. Yeah. But I don't know. Does that answer your question? I feel like I went way off tangent on that.
I honestly can't remember what the question was.
How's your memory there?
Yeah. I'm verbally stupid. My new favorite saying.
I'm sorry.
Oh gosh. Do you need to disclose that you have epilepsy when you're racing or anything? Is that a
yes?
Yeah. Okay.
So up until the last year that I raced, when there was obviously some changes, they used to give me a different colored swim cap because it's the swim that's the most dangerous part. Yeah. If I have a seizure in the water, I'm dead. I hate to say it. It's the risk of it. So they would give me a different colored swim cap. They unfortunately took that away in 2019 and basically just said, if you think your health situation is that much of a risk, you shouldn't be racing. So
what? Yes. Get the fuck out. They took that away. Oh my fuck.
Which makes no sense to me, but I can't argue with the way they're managing it was never, there were some changes with, I think, Ironman in the last year. That year, 2020 doesn't count, but they had decided that it wasn't something that they wanted to continue doing. So I basically said, well, I want to race. I realize that it is definitely a risk. Like I do understand that. But I'm taking my chances that I haven't had a seizure in this long, that I'd be okay. So, but yes, it is disclosed. And yes, it was something that we managed, I think, in a very safe way up until recently. So yes, there's my 2 bits. Yeah.
So, okay. So do you know Susan Lackey, who writes for Triathlete magazine?
I don't recognize the name.
Awesome woman. She's a age group triathlete, a journalist. She also happens to be hearing impaired, and she told me a few stories.
Cool.
Yeah, and one of the things that she said was she was told, and I think it was just at some small race, that she could do a team because they wouldn't allow her to swim because she was hearing impaired. So she was deaf. Because they're worried that if she swam off course or if something happened, they couldn't get hold of her or catch her or whatever. And then she,
I'm not quite figuring that out.
Mate, and then she actually said to me, I mean, I'm just guessing here, but I assume that most people who are swimming in the ocean or whatever can't really hear much at all either. So that's
I have so much water in my ears all the time. I can't hear anything.
Exactly.
I'm not even joking.
But it kind of led to the conversation of, well, if you're going to stop, so like she's obviously a competent swimmer. She's proven that she can swim, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But if you're going to stop someone from doing what they have trained for, why isn't there a checklist of, you know, everyone who signs up for an iron distance or a half iron distance or any kind of triathlon to say that to prove, oh, I've lost you. Oh, no, there you are.
Yeah, no, you're good. Sorry.
You're right. To prove that you can safely get through a 3.8K swim. Like, how many people do we see dragged out, not so much in Kona, but in any iron distance race or half?
Yeah.
How many people do we see dragged out of the water because they weren't sufficiently prepared to even finish the swim, not even be competitive? Yeah. So this is where, and I'm clearly talking, you know, preaching to the converted here, but every single person who gets on that start line is taking some form of a risk, right? And I do understand that your situation is heightened because, you know, of the epilepsy, but I don't. What I don't understand is that having a swim cap is a different swim cap is such a great workaround to sort of say, all right, just you need to keep one eye on. I don't,
right?
And especially in the pro field as well. Like, you're not in amongst 2,000 people. And based on your swim, you're going to be swimming alone, right?
Thanks. That was a low blow.
Sorry,
yes, basically. No, that's okay. Sorry.
I don't. Yeah. Sorry, can we just pause for 1 second just because I hear Frankie awake and I'm just going to grab her and...
Oh, yeah. No, I actually that reason I got up is I realized my iPad is going to die too and I don't want to lose you, so...
All right. Give me 1 minute. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. No, don't be. It's all good.
You want to wait? It's okay.
Aww.
Sorry, I'm just quickly setting her up.
It's all good. I totally get it.
What was that? Sorry?
I said it's all good. I totally get it.
Especially these days as well. Like, everyone's got a kid or a dog or a cat at home.
I know. Well, even mine, because I just got back from my run and I had him in his crate. And of course he hears me home and I'm like, oh crap. I'm like, he's going to be whining the whole time we're going to be on this. And then I'm like, if I let him out here, I'm like, I'm going to find a mess somewhere. I know he's probably peed somewhere, but I'm like, at least then he won't be whining. Oh well.
I like it. I like the interruptions. I'll probably just leave that little bit of silence in there anyway, because I don't know, people can go get a coffee while they're listening.
No, there you go. Pause, coffee break.
Yeah. And sorry, that was such a good story to be taking your break on. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
But yeah, so sorry to make this about me for a second, but I actually, when I was coaching in triathlon, I was coaching I think I was assistant coach in this group, and one of the they're all beginners, and one of the athletes was walking. So they're walking down the steps. It's in the it's in the bay, but there's like a cornered off sort of jetty that goes all the way around. So it makes it like this big, massive pool. And she was walking down the steps, and someone else was already in the water, another coach, and I was sort of bringing up the rear. And she went in and started fitting at the bottom of the steps, and I was right behind her and caught her. And I had no idea what was going on because she hadn't disclosed anything to us prior. Thankfully, it was at the bottom of the steps, and I managed to pull her in, and we called the ambulance and everything. So obviously I understand that it's risky. I do understand that. But I think, again, if if I was aware of that, then we just would have made precautions to make sure that, she could do it safely.
Like, I'm not asking for special treatment. I thought it was a fairly simple fix, right?
It's a different colored cap.
So, I mean, I guess we all sign waivers for a reason, but
Mate,
you get where I'm going with that. So,
yeah,
I mean, other race organizations have still been good with that. So it was just the latter part of 2019 there that kind of changed a bit. So,
shit.
And I can't say how things are right now because I haven't raced since then. So,
all right,
I have no idea.
Stay tuned. Keep us posted on that one as well. We have to do another podcast apparently because we've got things to catch up on.
Some unfinished business.
Yes, a little bit. But I want to go back to. I remember the question that I actually did ask you.
I do too, actually.
Okay. So taking that leap of faith, that risk, and I'm just saying risk because, let's face it, there's not a whole lot of money and stability in professional especially women's professional triathlon.
No.
So, what was kind of the conversations around that? And I guess what was the deciding factor that you're like, let's just do it?
So basically what had happened is because I didn't like my job, but I was there because it was stable and it helped pay the bills and it had really good benefits. And it was a solid job to have a family with. Right. Yeah. But I started to struggle a lot with memory issues. And my boss at that time was a total bitch. And she was on her way out to retirement and honestly didn't care at all.
Right.
So I wasn't getting any support from her on help with trying to do things. And it was making it's just making everything super difficult. Cause I'm like, I know there's a workaround. I just got to figure out how to do it. Right. Like, I'm not really that stupid. I just need to figure out how to, do my job properly.
Yeah.
Cause I know I can do it. And at that time, my seizures were uncontrolled and my doctors had given me my dose was that for a 200-pound man. So I was getting no therapeutic effects and all the side effects. Sure. And I started to get really, really depressed and actually pretty much depressed would sum up all the rest of the symptoms.
Yeah.
On top of things not going well with my job. So I took a leave from work. And once I figured out, we saw my specialist, we started transferring over to another drug to get rid of those side effects. And one that I'm currently on that's worked ever since. And then once I honestly was away from that job for, a month or so, I'm like, wow, I realized how much I hate that job and I don't want to go back. And it really just gave me a chance to prioritize my things in life. Obviously my family is always going to be priority and being able to support my family is as well. But I also was like, if I don't, at my age now, if I don't take this opportunity maybe to pursue this and give it a shot, I don't know if I'll ever get a chance again, because I'm leaving this job. Yeah. So I either pursue this or I find another job and likely not have the opportunity to pursue racing again, if that makes sense, right? Yeah. You can't leap that many times. And and then, I had the support from my husband to go for it. So that sealed the deal right there.
Yeah.
For sure. And I've got enough experience with different things that I'm like, I'll always be able to find a job. Yeah. It's not like I'll ever be jobless. I can always have something to fall back on. So, And then at this point, actually, and I'm not retiring anytime soon. Don't take this the wrong way. I do plan on racing for quite a number more years, but excellent. My goal would be to transition into coaching and health and wellness kind of type that thing. So, but yeah, I mean, it was a little nervous to leave that job, but it, like I said, once I looked at the big picture and had the support from my family, then like, let's do it. Yeah. Well, there's definitely a couple moments there where I'm like, oh shit, I don't know if I made the right decision, but yeah, we've made things work. It's definitely not, it's not a sport to make a lot of money in, but you also only live once, right? And then if we're able to do the things that we want to do as a family and, be able to pay for those things and all of that stuff, then, and we're enjoying life, that's really all that matters, right?
Exactly. And if the past 12 months has taught us anything, it's that we've got to enjoy, we've got to be happy. Well, good on you. I mean, you just said, I was supporting the family is always going to be the number one priority, but working at a bank, being depressed, how much support can you give to your family when you're in that situation? So obviously in retrospect, it's easy. It's much easier to say it's a clear choice. It's an easy choice to do what you love. But yeah, I imagine that decision-making process wouldn't have been easy, but congrats for taking the lead, because I don't think there's not a whole lot of people who would do that. It's easier to stay safe, to go for the secure option, and there's also nothing wrong with that. That's up everyone's own call. But I applaud people who just chase it, get after it. So good for you.
Got to do what you got to do, right? You only live once.
Exactly.
Right.
I've taken up so much of your time. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. I
got nothing else to do. There's no races to train for.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's finally nice out. I can't go for a bike ride. I got like 2 hours before Nixon gets off of school. So
okay. Well, you should definitely go and do that. Jen and Annett.
Annett.
Yeah, Annett.
There you go. Just imagine the E is an I.
Oh, Annett. No.
Annett. There you go.
Got it.
You got it. I'm going to quiz you next time.
Excellent. Oh gosh, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story, and probably sharing more of your story than you thought you were going to share, but that's what happens here.
It's all good. You asked me, you warned me. It's all good. Yeah.
Well, we'll definitely have to catch up again and find out if anything has changed on quite a number of things for you.
Yes.
For that. Let's do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, okay. Let's do it.
Thanks, mate.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.